Officers quickly located a female in a wooded area beneath the highway. Fire and EMS also responded, and she was transported to the University Hospital. She was provided extensive advanced trauma care, but sadly died hours later. We will release her name once next of kin have been notified. Thanks to descriptions provided by witnesses of the male suspect, officers were able to quickly locate and detain Jesse R. Williams, 31, of Columbia. Mr. Williams resisted officers at the scene of his detention, but was taken into custody without injury, and we were requesting the charge of first-degree murder.
Columbia Police Department's Christian Tabak with the update. You're talking about the story yesterday. Dude and a woman, 6370 area, Clark Lane, apparently getting into some kind of fight, and he ends up picking up, in effect. We're looking through court documents this morning that Stephanie Bell and I have our hands on this morning. Brian Hausworth is going to be joining us shortly here. He was in court yesterday downtown Columbia to learn more about this case, and it's disturbing on several different levels. Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell, John Marsh, Brian Hausworth, producer Hannah. My name is Branden Rathert, reading some of these witness statements about what happened. Apparently several folks started calling the cops. This is about 6:30 Tuesday night. They start calling the cops, and people are like, man, there's a dude trying to throw this woman over the bridge here, over the edge of the 63 overpass. Cops end up showing up, and sure enough, they find a body. Of course, this woman, sadly enough, deceased. 24. She's a kid, 24 years old. Hausworth there in court yesterday. What were some of the more startling points to you?
Well, I'll tell you what sticks out to me, Brandon, is number one, he did not go to court. This is confusing. I spent a lot of time in court to pick up court documents, but what happened is the Missouri Probation and Parole Board revoked his parole. I got a tip as soon as I arrived at the courthouse yesterday that one of my sources at the courthouse said that he's been at the DOC, and I said, well, what about court? Well, the bottom line is, and we kind of touched on this, Brandon, yesterday, because technically if he had been caught smoking weed or driving intoxicated, that would be grounds to revoke his parole. Probably wouldn't happen. Generally they have discretion. You get something like this, they revoke him. He was going to go back no matter what. So there is really no rush to get him in for an arraignment. And
he was on parole several years ago, stabbed a 73-year-old homeless man, went to the homeless person's tent while he was sleeping, shot the victim with a paintball gun, stabbed him with a knife. This dude was in his 70s, and the guy took off. So he's in prison, and so now we're wondering, well, how come he was only in prison for a short time? That's something we're going to cover coming up 7:10 this morning, because there's a lot going on here. Reading some of these witness accounts, one guy driving by, he's going down 63, and he sees this couple over there, and they're fighting off on the side of the road. He calls 911, and he says, yeah, no doubt, this dude's trying to kill her. He's trying to pick her up and throw her over the bridge. What else did you uncover yesterday?
Well, I'll tell you, I think what you just said there is so powerful, Brandon, and so people know what Brandon and I are quoting from. This is the probable cause statement, which is an official court document, and this is an eyewitness, Brandon, who was driving on northbound 63, ballpark about 6:45 on Tuesday, and he told Officer Chang that the male, quote, was 100% no doubt trying to kill her. That was a quote. He said that the male was trying to throw the female over the guardrail, that the male was trying to pick up the female's legs while doing so, that they at one point were both on top of the ledge. Now, the way, and another witness kind of described that, he almost fell over as well. We have another witness that said that this was a female that drove by a little bit before. So I think the second witness came through that area maybe a minute or two before, maybe 2.5. It's hard to tell from here. But this woman saw the victim actually squirming, in her words, fighting back, trying to get out of his grip, and he was trying to lift her up. It's just very, very graphic, and I know it's very graphic to describe this on the air, but I think it's very important people hear this, because this gets back to why the CPD sought first-degree murder. This is premeditated based on the court documents. In our next question, and I've asked this, and I'm waiting to hear back, and I know it's early, will the Boone County Prosecutor's Office seek the death penalty in this case? That is an absolutely appropriate question to ask, and I know it's early, and they probably haven't made a decision yet, but at some point, Roger Johnson's going to have to make a decision, because this is as she was thrown 40 feet to her death, 38 to be exact, and she was still alive when she was on the ground. She died from a spine injury.
Yeah, two things jumped out to me. One, I think, why were they having this dispute? And I think there was something in the probable cause statement about them arguing over some belongings.
Yes.
And that seems like a horrible, reason to throw someone over the edge of a bridge. And then also, he seems really disturbed because apparently once he got to the police station, the officers were talking amongst themselves about the woman going over the bridge, and he screams out, "No, self-defense." Mm-hmm. And then later, they were talking to him, and he says, "I'm having emotional problems." Now, if you're a defendant, you have two main defenses, right? Either you're crazy or self-defense. And it seems like he's almost gaming, that he knows he's been in the justice system before, and he knows these are my two main defenses: self-defense. I'm crazy.
Spot on. That is 100. You are spot on. I mean, these guys, remember, they've spent time in the penitentiary. They know the law as well. And a lot of these guys, because I worked in the prison system, if they had been on the up and up, they'd be making six figures as attorneys. They know what they're doing, and they know the law very well. But, where he screwed up a little bit was where he was talking about how sick he was and then tried to fight the police in the police station. They actually had to throw him down because and then he tried to fight the police out at Sam's Club. I mean...
But it wouldn't be the first time that he got into an altercation with a law enforcement officer.
There was a time several years ago when he was in trouble for stabbing the first homeless dude that jailer was trying to slip him some food and on the tray. When that happened, he grabbed her arm, whipped the cuffs off of her belt, cuffed her to his wrist, and says, "You're mine now." Yeah, this dude is deep and dark, it sounds like, charged in this crime. So he didn't make the court appearance yesterday. But I'm looking, as I'm doing research on this dude, like, he's got the neck tattoo and everything. And you worked in the prison system.
Yeah, I thought it was hard to see. When I first saw that, and the DOC pictures they're not ideal because they're a little hard to see. And actually, I've talked to them about maybe getting a better picture of him when he got to prison. I thought originally that looked like a gang tattoo to me, but now looking at it again, I'm not so sure.
But it says daddy.
Yeah, daddy. So I'm a little, I'm
How
not
does
sure.
that go over in prison?
Yeah,
You're some badass gangbanger, and you go into prison, and you got the neck tattoo and everything.
Daddy.
This is daddy.
It's. I think Stephanie touched on this, and Branden has done a really great job on this show of talking about a lot of the homeless. A lot of the homeless don't panhandle. A lot of the panhandlers are not homeless. He's talked about that, and he's correct on that. He's studied the homeless. But Branden, there is there is a homeless camp basically right across the street in the woods area from the Steak and Shake and the Bob Evans. I don't think a lot of people realize it's there. In fact, in the winter, you can see the smoke because they're down there, keeping warm. Now, they've cleaned that out at times if there's still a group back in there, and I don't know how many are down there, but I know the police get called out periodically. Most of them are just trying to, make it, and they panhandle up at the intersections up near Home Depot. But no one else is implicated. I want to make that very clear. None of the other homeless people at the camp are accused of doing anything wrong. In fact, without saying too much, there is someone that was in the area of the homeless camp who's a critical witness to the police, and that's all I'm going to say because I want to protect, obviously, his identity. But that person said that the victim they were having some sort of dispute. She was trying to get her belongings back from Williams, and I take it, they don't go into much detail, I take it Williams was not wanting to give the items back. Now, what we don't know is why then did they walk up and how did they end up at that bridge? That's unclear in here, and they don't elaborate. That probably won't come out until the trial. But something happened to the point where they were walking, and then it happened very quick based on these court documents.
And that area, there's a lot of homeless folks in that area. In the city of Columbia wants to take my taxpayer dollars and build a homeless shelter, and they bought some property. And this is an interesting story. We'll get off into too many branches here, but sure. City Councilwoman Betsy Peters bought some land, and now apparently Betsy Peters, who's a city councilwoman, wants to sell that to the Voluntary Action Center, and they want to open up a homeless shelter. There's a story from our news partners at ABC 17. They were telling me that the person, and I don't know how this worked because she used to own the land, She is against that idea. I reached out to her attorney yesterday. We started chatting with email. I'm like, hey, if your client's willing to talk or if you want to talk, what is your opposition to this homeless center? And I'll tell you what it is. And this is why whether you live in Jefferson City, Fulton, whether you live in Sturgeon, Centralia, Ashland, Tanya Heath, who ran for mayor in Columbia several months ago, she spends a lot of time talking to these homeless people, too. You go to some of these centers, and I've been at some of these centers, too, talking to these people. They know, like in the Midwest, they are marketing, the homeless people are marketing the city of Columbia to the homeless people. They are coming through here. They are coming here because the city of Columbia has done such a good job of marketing. Hey, come and listen. I'm not... There's homeless families. That's a whole different thing. Sure. That's a different animal. But I want to be clear here about what's happening. They're taking our taxpayer dollars because they're promoting these homeless people. Come here, come here, come here. And it's incredibly frustrating.
The only thing I would add, and very good detail, by the way, about that proposed homeless facility, which would be essentially right next to the power plant. And Mike Murphy was on 93.9 The Eagle and kind of profiled that. And there is certainly some opposition to that. Last thing I'd make, a very quick point, Brandon, is that we learned in this court document that Williams is homeless. Now, that is a little confusing because there's another court document that says he has a home, and I'm not going to say what street here in town, but he is listed officially as homeless here. What I don't know is the victim here, Ms. Schmidt, is she homeless? I can't tell. I take it maybe she is, maybe in some way, because she was trying to get her belongings back from him at the camp. So if she's not, she's been homeless based on these court documents. But we don't really learn a lot of detail about when it happened. Just based on this eyewitness, they're walking and the assault happened very quickly. But at least two, and if not more, and if there's anyone else that saw this that was driving by, the police definitely in Columbia want to hear from you, and they will protect your identity.
By the way, and I wonder, so in that first thing, why the guy ended up in prison in the first place when he stabbed the homeless dude by a gas station back in 2018. He went into that guy's tent, and I'm not trying to be funny here, but he like, can you get tagged with breaking and entering charges even if you bust into somebody's tent? Does that count as breaking and entering? I'm being serious.
I think it's a great question, and what we don't know, it's simply because I've had so much going on, and it's hard to tell without being in court. What I don't know, Brandon and Stephanie, is how that got essentially downgraded. That, to me, is first-degree assault. Mm-hmm. How that ended up as second-degree assault. And it could be something as simple as the homeless man that was attacked was afraid to testify. There could be factors there that I don't know about. But that really is, if that's not first-degree assault, I don't know what is. The man was stabbed with a knife, shot with a paintball gun, attacked in his own tent, the homeless man, and he had life-threatening injuries. That is, from all indications, I'm not a lawyer, Stephanie, that is first-degree assault. I'm confident to say that.
The other thing I have a question about is we've been talking a lot about surveillance, and I assume by the location that no one got this on camera, but there's a lot of businesses close by.
There is the Bob Evans, there's a Steak and Shake, there's a hotel, and I want to say it's a Best Western. Unfortunately, and there's a socket up the street. I don't know where, and they probably do have some surveillance at those three businesses I mentioned, but I don't know that it faces out towards the street, and certainly not up towards where that, I doubt it'd be able to capture where they were actually standing up on the overpass.
We're hoping Sheree Tolson Rice. Now, she's got an interesting perspective. And again, we don't know the whole story, but lenient sentences, letting folks out early, downplaying and or downgrading charges. Hopefully she's going to join us at 7:10 this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 104.5 KWOS 950. And tomorrow on a Feel Good Friday, typically we chill out on Fridays. Governor Parson, he knows that we like to chill out on Fridays. He's like, hey, can I join y'all tomorrow? Governor Mike Parson joins us on a Feel Good Friday. Getting ready for the daily DC Rundown. Stephanie Bell, what's shaking?
If you're going to lie, at least make it believable.
Uh-oh.
There's no surprise that we're seeing extremist laws pop up around the country that are having a ripple effect far beyond the health rights of a pregnant woman.
That's President Joe Biden talking about abortion. By the way, Joe and Ron DeSantis of Florida have a budding bromance going on. I think we're going to cover that like 8 or 7:10 this morning. That's getting us into today's Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
They do. Well, Democrats are continuing to make abortion and trying to highlight it before the midterms. Republicans continue to step in it. Herschel Walker said that he, didn't pay for this abortion, and then it comes out yesterday apparently that he fathered a child with this woman, and so his excuse was, I don't even know who this woman is. And she's like, oh, wait a minute, we have a kid together.
I remember you now.
So they already had the receipts initially, and I think maybe you could say, oh, she asked me for money, I gave her some money, I didn't know anything about the abortion. But then you say, oh, I didn't know her, and then you're like, well, you had to kind of know her if you had a kid together, maybe, hopefully.
Just a little bit.
It's not good. Republican Tim Michaels is also taking a step back. He apparently said that he was never going to change his position on abortion. 2 weeks later, he kind of retreated and has said, well, now I would sign legislation that would grant certain exceptions. And so people involved in really hotly contested Republican races have been, Democrats have been pointing out, oh, you're kind of changing your positions on this. And I think it has a lot to do with where America is right now.
Tim Michaels, he's Wisconsin Republican gubernatorial candidate.
Yeah. And, Joe Biden is praising the brave women of Iran who are demanding, basic rights. And there is a big uproar right now in Iran, but that is kind of foiling his plan to salvage the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Obviously, that was kind of teetering, and now he is, trying to support the people that are protesting without, it's a big mess. And this particularly makes me nervous, as well as the UN Security Council meeting yesterday about the nuclear missiles. It's just a mess.
A mess. It's just one hot mess, man. By the way, 7:35 this morning, Jonathan Dine, a Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate running against Trudy and Eric. He joins us on the show. Coming up a few minutes from now. So I'm wondering, Josh Hawley, he has supported Herschel Walker. What is he doing with that support now because of these new allegations regarding Herschel Walker? That's coming up 5 minutes from now.
My intention is don't lie about your life at the expense of me, my mom, and all of the people that you've affected throughout your life. You don't get to pretend you're some moral family guy. You don't get to pretend all these things. Talk policy, talk normal. Do not lie.
Bang! That's Herschel Walker's kid. His name is Christian. He's like, man, come on, talk policy, talk all the stuff, Dad, that you want to do in Senate. By the way, I'm the kid you didn't abort. Do talk policy, talk that stuff, but don't pretend. Don't lie about these things. Don't do that. And I got to tell you, I completely agree with this kid. I think a lot of times, and I'll speak for me, I don't want to speak for other people. We talk about ownership of things. Take ownership. Well, when you make a mistake, take ownership of that too. If you lie, no, don't lie. I've found if I don't lie, I don't have to go back and clean up my messes. Isn't that amazing how that works? If I'm just honest. Wow.
But again, politicians being honest, you're asking a lot this morning, Brandon. I mean, and so, yeah, an article came out and said, well, Holly still supports Herschel Walker, and they're trying to say, like, oh, he's, can't believe he would do that. But I can kind of, so it wasn't like this, he's the best dude ever. They just said, hey, in the past you've said, you support him. Do you still support him? And I think it was just like, yeah, I do. And I think he agrees with Rick. Rick texted in and said, Walker is a mess, but Warnock is a communist. And so if you have the choice, again, we get kind of back to where we thought we might be in Missouri. Like if you have two bad choices, and one, what did we call them? The Rhino Jesus and convict conservatives. If you have somebody who has really bad personal failings, but they're going to do conservative policies, and then you've got someone else who, as Rick pointed out, is a communist, you can't pick. You can't pick. We're going to talk to a libertarian today. You picked a libertarian. One of these two bad people, allegedly are going to win. So you got to pick the least of the worst. And
I'm wondering, let's say somebody's a hardcore conservative Republican voter in Georgia, and let's say they believe these allegations that Herschel Walker paid for an abortion 13 years ago. Are they going, well, I'm not voting for him. I like everything else about him. I don't know what it is I like, but I like that he's got the letter R behind his name because I really don't know. He's got the conservative. He checks all the boxes. But he paid for an abortion 13 years ago? Nope, not voting for him. There's probably a few of the really hardcores will say, well, I'm not voting for him because he paid for an abortion, despite the fact the majority of Americans for a lot of years, have been okay with some kind of abortion. I don't know that many people will say, I'm changing my vote on that one.
And I don't think if he would have just come out and said, you know what, I'm not proud of it. It happened. Yeah. I don't think anyone would have changed their vote, honestly. Maybe a couple people. But I think the lying and the continued lying and the way, like I don't know her. And then she's like, but we had a kid together. I mean, I think that even for a Republican.
That one. Yeah, I do remember. You're the mother of Mike. Yeah, I do remember you.
I think it's the lying that could turn, that probably will turn conservatives off. And, what is it? Like the devil, right? Somebody, even if I disagree with someone, if they're going to be straight with me, I feel like I can have a conversation, and I think if you can't predict people, and if you feel like they're lying to your face, I feel like a lot of people in business would rather deal with a moderate, honest Democrat than somebody they think lies. Now here, I don't think they have the choice of a moderate, honest Democrat. So again, I think a lot of folks are going to stick with Herschel Walker.
And I think this could be a really good case study in a lot of things, what's unfolding here. Marsh, let's say you've got your candidate picked out. Maybe Jonathan Dine, Libertarian candidate who's on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning, 7:35 here on the show, running against Eric Schmidt and Trudy. It's a seat Eric is going to win. We're not so sure that Herschel Walker, even prior to this abortion thing, for what polls are worth. Yeah, that's what they do. And I'm wondering, so if, let's say you're voting for Jonathan Dine, and let's say there was one issue that he changed his mind on, John, just one. Do you think it changes then who you vote for 33 days from now in that U.S. Senate race for Missouri? Exactly. exactly. Yeah. Well, I want to play what Herschel was saying. This is, I think, from his conversation with Sean Hannity the other night. Sean Hannity is here weekdays starting at 2 o'clock on 93.9, the Eagle and News Radio, 1045 KWOS 950. By the way, did we introduce ourselves? I'm Stephen.
Yikes.
Off to a fine start, 6:41 in the morning.
Brandon hasn't had enough coffee this morning.
But if I demand that you identify me as Stephanie, by George.
I thought it was Brandina.
If you don't call me Stephanie, I'm calling the ACLU. That's how I demand. I demand you identify me as Stephanie. Even though I'm not, you identify me as Stephanie. That is Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
There's producer Hannah.
Good morning.
Brian Houseworth is here. There is Mr. John Marsh, who is no longer voting for me. Good morning, John. Lost my
We're
button.
probably better off.
Yeah, probably. You know, I used to be, and it's silly. I don't want to come off like it's a humble brag, but occasionally people would say, hey, you know, have you ever thought about doing something locally as far as an office? I'm like, and it used to be, no, you know, because I got stuff out there and I don't want to. Well, over the past 2 years, I haven't had a drink in 773 days, and a lot of folks have been more open about what's out there, and it's kind of like, still wouldn't run for office or anything. Still wouldn't do it. The thing that worries me the most, it's not my past because I can use the past to, you know, behave differently now. But like old comedy videos on YouTube, like dating a chick in a wheelchair and stuff. That's the stuff.
Yikes.
Oh, you've been arrested a couple of times. You stole some fishing poles. You stole a Subway sandwich from an airport in Salt Lake City. Yeah. That I don't think would upset people anymore. It's, oh, you did a joke about dating women in wheelchairs, and that's the stuff that would freak people out.
Well, and you're finding so many more ways to get involved. Like, you know, we talk about getting involved, but it doesn't always mean running for office. And like, you've really picked up a lot of community stuff over the last, especially 6 months.
Well, I had a lot of community stuff in the past, too.
Right.
It was just called community service. Okay, Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker on his son.
Well, I love my son unconditionally, and that's where I've always been. I always love him unconditionally. You know, he graduated college a couple of months ago.
All right, now, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Wake Up Mid-Missouri, you would have seen Stephanie frown, which is funny because I had that same reaction. What about the first 8 seconds of that comment caused you to make a face? I'll tell you, he sounded like, well, I love my son. He sounded like a robot. Hey, Herschel, when you go out and you talk to Sean tonight, here's what you say. I love my son unconditionally.
And like, which son? And wasn't that the same son that was on Twitter saying, like, you were never here for me? Like, this is why I'm mad.
He's now a young man doing his own thing, but his father's always there for him. I always will be for any of my kids. And I love them. I always support them. And I always have supported them, and I always will, and I love him unconditionally.
But he's doing tremendous damage to you by coming out with those statements. Do you know why he's saying this?
Well, the damage he's doing, he's letting people know that the left will do whatever they can.
So it was Brian Kilmeade on Fox, actually, that he was talking to. But he's doing this because the left has gotten a hold of him and said, hey, go out and say this stuff about your dad. That's what Herschel is saying there. And Josh Hawley, our senator, says he still will support Herschel Walker in the Senate race. Latest poll, consistently polls have shown, for what polls are worth, that Herschel Walker's not going to win that race anyway. But that's important to us here in mid-Missouri this morning. You might think, well, Georgia Senate race, but if you're newer to politics, newer to talk radio, it is important. It is about control of the Senate. And we've seen some of the things that have come across the finish line since those tragic events of January the 20th, 2021. We've got to get control of the Senate. And here's the thing with Herschel Walker. This could be a great case study. Think about it. Here we are, we're debating, and I'm not debating whether or not it's true because I don't care whether he paid for an abortion 13 years ago. I just simply don't care. What I do care about is that, yeah, we need to have better people in the Senate because of the direction we're going in with this country. It's insane. I mean, people won't identify me as Stephanie, even though I demanded to be identified as Stephanie.
I have a reputation to protect.
So all these people are debating and whether or not it's true and the abortion, and I think people are having to come to terms and be honest with themselves about where they really stand on abortion, because I'll go back to what I said yesterday. I'm going to triple down here. I believe a lot of people aren't as passionate about personally about abortion as they are as just a political issue, and I think we're going to see maybe some of that with Herschel Walker, like, okay, I'm okay that he did that. But the other thing, what would we be talking about today if Herschel, as soon as these allegations came out, and this could apply to any politician, any scandal that they say, no, it's not true. What's your reaction if a politician comes out and says, yeah, I did, and I should have been honest about it, but I didn't because I had fear that you were going to judge me, whatever. What would we be saying about them this morning? I think, Marsh, and I don't know about you, but I'd be like, man, I got respect for you. You messed up or you lied. I have respect that you're taking ownership of your mistake. You are taking ownership of your lie. You are admitting it and trying to make it right. Doesn't necessarily mean that I would potentially vote for you, but I think we'd be having a different conversation. What about you? Do you think that would help, John?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a story today because we keep, like, every day it's a headline of another layer of the lie. And if you just came out and said, you know what, I think we would be talking about something else.
Ownership. Coming up a few minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, we're going to be doing, there is a couple of things we
I'll tell you, the ceremony was amazing because when we first started planning it, we weren't exactly sure where we were headed with it, and it actually turned out to be better than we could even thought. You know, we had the Pledge of Allegiance by our students sang the national anthem, we got to play our school song. Governor Parson really pumped everybody up, more so than usually before, even in an assembly, and so it was just great to see the school spirit.
That's Tara Bishop. She is the principal of Blair Oaks Elementary, chatting with KRCG. Governor Parson went to a couple of schools in Cole County. Yes, he was at Eugene. He went to Blair Oaks. They were one of the very few schools in the nation to be honored with a blue ribbon. And this was right after I applaud leadership there at Blair Oaks. Finally, somebody said, man, let's quit talking about this transgender stuff. This is stupid. We are here to educate people. They got a Blue Ribbon Award. Governor Parson was there yesterday, and the kids were excited. Governor Parson talked with his folks yesterday and said, hey, it's Feel Good Friday. Decent special session, I guess.
Well, yeah, and how cool is it that he's in the school, because there's pictures all over from yesterday. He's sitting in his office signing, the most historic tax cut in state history, and then he's like, hold on, got to go over to Blair Oaks.
Yeah. And then after signing one of the most historic tax cuts in the history of Missouri, first radio show, he's coming on in all the state of Missouri.
Wake up mid-Missouri. Here
on 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 104.5 KWOS 950. That's Stephanie Bell. I'm Branden Rathert. John Marsh. Producer Hannah. Brian Houseworth is here, too. I want to get into this real quick. Steph, you ever play Wordle?
Yeah.
All right, Marsh, you play Wordle? I'm still trying to get tic-tac-toe down before I moved on to things. Hannah, you ever play the Wordle?
Oh yeah.
It was like really hot for a little bit, and I guess some people are still playing. I don't understand the concept, know nothing about it, but a listener tipped us off to this. I do know this. The word, it's some puzzle, and you whittle it down to a word or something.
You have 6 tries. There's 5 letters, and it tells you, it lights up, and it says, is your letter right, and is it in the right place?
Okay. The word yesterday, it's all to come down to one word. The word yesterday, marsh.
Oh.
How about that? Man, not only are you legendary here in mid-Missouri, practicing journalism for over 30 years here in the state of Missouri, they thought, hey, let's honor that kid there in mid-Missouri, John Marsh. Marsh, word of the day yesterday on. So, and I wanted to talk about this. I'm like, I should do this, but apparently, thank goodness, somebody said, no, you can't do that because there's hundreds of thousands of other people in Missouri here that play Wordle that haven't gotten up to do this yet. So you should wait till tomorrow.
Yeah, you can't give away the answer, but there is like a huge hotly contested debate about what 5-letter word do you start with. And sometimes I would start with eagle just because I thought maybe it's lucky. It's not really a good word because it has 2 E's, but maybe you could start with marsh today and see if that sets you off on a good path.
Marsh, congratulations, buddy. Man, just last month you won an award. Honored. You were honored for your work, your news coverage during COVID, and now Wordle, honoring our John Marsh yesterday. Kamala Harris the other day, she's in her security detail and involved in a fender bender kind of car crash kind of thing. Couple of onlookers from a 3rd-story apartment window filming the thing.
Fucking insane. We saw her. Ange, we saw her. I saw her.
We saw her. So they get all kinds of excited and stuff. But apparently the bigger thing is, and I don't know how it works with the Secret Service, but they send some kind of electronic indicator like, hey, we're off track or something. And they said it was a mechanical failure. But there's some officials saying, no, it wasn't a mechanical failure. You're like, dude, you went over and hit the curb. But it makes, and she gets into another car and she just goes on to the next thing because our vice philosophizer, that's just what she does.
Seems like maybe it's a small issue, it's a big issue. You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
She had to get home. She had to get to go to where she had to get going to, and she had to go, and so she just climbed into another car and called it good. You're a vice philosophizer. Coming up here, 7:03, Brian Houseworth, more details that we have uncovered in the past 24 hours regarding the death of a woman after she was pushed over a bridge on 63 near Clark Lane. Then Cherie Tolson-Reich. She is here at 7:10. We're going to be talking about lenient sentences and time served and all that, and I think she has an incredibly unique take on this. Remember, Cherie Tolson-Reich, she has worked to get people out of prison. I think of Demetrius Woods, who's serving a long-term sentence for drugs, and her and some other folks here in Missouri worked to get him out. What Demetrius, who's been on the show several times, what this guy does with his life, helping other people in mid-Missouri, it's remarkable. So let's all stick around, hear what she has to say, coming up at 7:10 on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Mr. Williams was paroled in August for the 2018 stabbing of a homeless man. We are so thankful for the witnesses and officers who came forward and came together to get this man into custody.
That's Christian Tabak, Columbia Police Department, regarding that kid, 24 years old, pushed off a bridge at 63 by Clark Lane the other night. Brian Halsworth in a courtroom yesterday, learning some more of the details, what witnesses saw. Like this couple was walking down 63, and the dude was literally, apparently, according to eyewitness accounts, trying to pick this young child, 24 years old, trying to pick this woman up and throw her over the bridge. It is disturbing. Yes. It is also disturbing because it's highlighting several problems that all are rooted in progressivism. Columbia is becoming a bastion for homelessness. Like, it is being marketed, I kid you not, in homeless communities. I'm not making this up. These homeless folks, they're in other parts of the state. Hey, we've heard Columbia's got all the good stuff, and they're getting ready to take Brian Halsworth and Stephanie Bell and Branden Rathert and John Marsh's and producer Hannah's tax money and go give it to them and build them a shelter and feed them every day. They're going to take their tax dollars and do that. And these homeless people, man, they're grabbing their backpacks and they're hightailing it down 70, up 63, and they're coming to Columbia, and the city is going full bore into this. That's a problem. And then, although we do, and I want to be careful on this next part because we don't know the full story. We do know that this guy had previously served time in prison for a pretty heinous crime. Went to a homeless dude's tent, stabbed him, hit him with a paint gun. Then when he was sitting in the Boone County Jail, attacked a guard there.
Yes.
And as you heard Christian Tabak from the Columbia Police Department say, the guy had been released from prison last month, just back in August. So lenient sentences, things like that. And again, we don't know all the stories. Did he plead down? He served, 4 years, 4.5 years?
He would have gotten credit. I did check with Karen Posman. He would have gotten credit, and I have the notes in the other room. I'll get you. Let's say it was 345 days. It was just under a year. So basically, he served 4 years of a 7-year sentence. He was paroled, but probably, and again, I'm not an attorney, that looks to me like right at the mark of conditional release. So it looks to me like DOC kept him as long as they could, just because the fact that Missouri is a conditional release state. What I'm baffled is, how did that end up as a second-degree assault? The homeless attack, that's baffling.
And we've heard numerous stories nationwide. You can pick the easy targets: San Francisco, Seattle, New York, Philadelphia, and these people, Garcetti in Los Angeles, just go easy on criminals, let them back out. They get back out. Not all of them, a lot of them. They get back out and they commit crimes and they murder people. What do? Do we contact our state legislators, find out, hey, where are we in Missouri on some of this stuff? We know we're ruby red, but are we battening down the hatches on all this progressive stuff? Want to bring in State Representative Cherie Tolston Rice, represents kind of northeastern portions of Boone County and above that. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here. And I think some unique perspective. Cherie Tolston Rice has spent her time actually trying to free people from prison. Demetrius Woods, who's been on our show several times. This guy is an incredible story. This guy's like the bastion of, hey, man, I was selling drugs. I went to prison, and now I'm out on the streets of Columbia. This guy owns 3 local businesses. He is now a vendor at Mizzou basketball games. He goes into schools and talks to kids. This guy, back in the 90s, if you wanted coke in Columbia, you went to this dude. Went to prison. Cherie Tolston helped to get this guy out of prison. He's a lovely, lovely human being. So, Cherie,
yes.
Where are we as far as leniency on sentences and things like that? How do we stack up against, for example, the progressive states?
Well, thank you, Branden, for having me this morning. There's nothing better than waking up and seeing a text from you bright and early in the mornings. And so I always agree to come on, but I first have to have my 3 cups of coffee first. So, the thing is, there's not one good answer. The people that I have helped were nonviolent, and that is not the case here with the woman that was killed or the homeless man. Those were violent crimes. And I draw the line, and that is a huge, huge difference. I wanted to pre-warn you, I'm out on the road this morning. If my cell service cuts in and out, I'm driving. But so when I look into a case, what is the crime? I don't touch anything that's a violent crime. We are a nation of laws. we would have anarchy. And we know criminals don't follow laws. So it's a real fine line between the judicial system, prosecutors, on and on. It's just somehow this guy, I think, was let out soon, but maybe they just had to follow what the Missouri law was at the time.
Representative, we appreciate you, and you've studied this issue. You know it. I know you've talked about it, and I think what you're obviously clarifying is the difference between violent and nonviolent, because you've helped other people too. You've appealed on their behalf to the governor, people who are nonviolent, and I think that's very important to note, because in this case, Williams the record speaks for itself. This is a violent. Let's go back to this attack in 2018. This comes straight from the Columbia Police Department's probable cause statement. According to them, he went into this homeless man, 73-year-old homeless man's tent, attacked him, stabbed him repeatedly, and also shot him with a paintball gun. And it was a guilty plea based on court records. I wasn't here then. I was at Missouri Net, so I wasn't in the courtroom. But it was a guilty plea. He ends up getting 7 years, but DOC kept him apparently as long as they could. He got 4 years, let's say, out of a 7-year sentence. Does the conditional release law need to be changed, Representative?
Yeah, look at, I see what happens is, a lot of times prosecutors are overworked and understaffed. A lot of times things are pled down to a lesser charge. And I want to reiterate, I have nothing but respect for our law enforcement and the hard jobs that they have. And they are understaffed and overworked, especially in Columbia with a lot of the violent crimes that are going on in our community. But, I think most cases need to be looked at a case-by-case basis. But it doesn't mean laws don't need to be changed or tweaked or made better.
Sri Tolshan-Rice, State Rep, joining us here this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 104.5 KWOS 950. It's interesting as I listen to you talk, police, underfunded, don't have enough people working, light sentences, people come out and recommit crimes. And all of these stem really from progressive politicians. Now, we didn't defund police in any mid-Missouri that I can think of, but they're having a hard time getting people because progressives and national news outlets lambasted law enforcement officers, sometimes rightfully so, but not every time, and they didn't correct the story when they got it wrong. Leniency on a prosecutorial level, that's a progressive thing. We're in these problems. All these problems come from these progressives.
Now, his previous crime occurred at a homeless camp, and this appears to be, he was, I think, involved in the homeless camp near where the incident occurred here. I know in the last session, the state legislature passed a bill trying to address homelessness. Is there anything on the state level? Columbia, it's a constant discussion, but is there anything on the state level that we can do to try to address some of these issues?
So we did pass a law, the governor signed, that homeless camps cannot be on state property. And part of that is they're camping under bridges. And they started a fire up in Kansas City and actually damaged a bridge. And so this is a safety issue for the general public also.
State Representative Sri Tolshan-Rice hanging out with us here on the show. As it relates to sentencing guidelines and length of time that people, when they serve their sentences, anything else that you would like to add to this?
Well, I hate to say, don't do the crime if you can't do the time, but I think every case is unique and circumstances. But when I see nationwide people with violent crimes are being let out of jail with posting no bond, there's a serious problem.
And I know there are some local efforts underway, not to change the law, but which, I don't have any qualms with. There's some folks in Columbia, they've got like this little group and they collect money and they'll use that to bail when somebody gets into jail. They'll bail them out. I will look forward to seeing you tonight, Boone County Chili Supper. You'll be there, I guess, one of the featured speakers. Who else is going to be hanging out with us? Do you know?
Well, so we've got John Martin, Dustin Stanton, Connie Leopard, Shamon Jones, and we may have some surprises. We may have a lot of fun, good food, and encourage people to come out and enjoy the evening.
And tickets are still available. Just you go search Boone County Pachyderm Chili Supper. And this is a way to kind of get involved. We talk about getting involved. You don't necessarily have to go and campaign for folks or donate money. But to get involved, there's well over 100 people at this event every single year. People that are probably like-minded. And it's a good opportunity for you to come in and meet some of these folks. And meet some of these office holders, by the way. You need to meet people like Cherie Tolson-Reich and hold her feet to the fire.
That's right.
Or any of these people that are running for office. You talk about Dustin Stanton, county office holder in Boone County. Shimon Jones, who is running for office. John Martin, who is running for state rep. You can talk to these candidates. You don't have to rely on radio interviews here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri or reading about them. I highly encourage people to go and meet these people. Cherie Tolson-Reich, we will see you tonight. Thank you for thank you for your time this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
I think what stands out to me about what she said there, it's a little bit of a sidebar issue, but I'm glad you brought it up about the law, Stephanie and Brandon, about the homeless camps. That's specifically talking about state property. I was not aware about the homeless setting a fire under a bridge in Kansas City. It's the first I've heard of that. But I do want to clarify one thing. To the best of my, I know this, at least under where the lady was thrown off. Right in that area, and I'm not sure further down, but right in that area, that is definitely not state property. So there's no state law against them having a camp there. I also think, to be fair, we should also point out, and I said this in the 6 o'clock hour, no other people in this homeless camp are accused of doing anything wrong in this case. In fact, one of them is a key witness who helped identify the suspect. I do think that's very important. I'm not going to elaborate on anything more on him because we want to protect his identity. But it's one person in the camp. It's the main suspect, and the key question is now, I think the key question at this point for Roger Johnson, will you seek the death penalty? At some point, he's going to have to make a decision. It's very early because this is there's a lot of interest in this case.
Yeah, not all homeless people are bad. Just dudes who push chicks off bridges. DeSantis yesterday, Joe Biden in Florida yesterday. So it's DeSantis, the guy who's going to beat him for the presidency in 2024, right? Mm-hmm. Joe Biden's in Florida talking about relief and all that. And I love it. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, Wake Up Mid-Missouri, because I have some audio. And Stephanie's already, she's pulling up.
Ready.
She's pulling up to the table, man. She's got a knife in one hand, a fork in the other, ready to devour this. How did it go?
Thankful that they have so many people that are there supporting, and that's really, you only get there if it's a team effort. So, Mr. President, welcome to Florida. We appreciate working together across various levels of government, and the floor is yours.
Is it okay to applaud, Ron? Yeah, you can go ahead and applaud. And when he first got out of the SUV, when Joe did, they went, there's some video, like 3 or 4 minutes, just hanging out and chatting.
It's classy. And, if you really are challenged by someone, that's when you see people kind of go at loggerheads. Trump would really get after people that he thought was challenging him. But when you're just, better than someone, you can just, be so kind because you're like, I'm not even worried about you, dude. And so he's like, hey, come on down. I'll introduce you. We'll play nice because, you're not even on my level.
Or I liken it to sports. I mean, people, defensive linebackers, they'll get out there and try to kill Patrick Mahomes for 60 minutes a game. And then after the game, hey, Patrick, they'll even swat him on the butt, maybe. Budding bromance between those two. Hannah, what do you got for What's Hot with Hannah today?
Well, if you have daughters, today's the day that you need to pay attention. It's an important national holiday.
Important national holiday. If you have daughters, we'll do that. And then in honor of the budding bromance between Ron DeSantis and Joe Biden. My endless love. Good morning, 7:25-ish, which means it's
7:27.
time for What's Hot with Hannah.
You know, Stephanie, you have 2 daughters.
I do.
I am a daughter. So today is a very important holiday for the both of us. Today, October 6th, is National Transfer Money to Your Daughter Day.
Yes.
Did you just make that up, Hannah?
I did not. So I saw a Facebook post about it this morning, and I really figured it was just a funny meme, kind of. But I looked it up, and it's an actual national holiday.
Did you put in a request to Amy?
Well, I tagged my mom
Amy
and dad.
is Hannah's mom.
I tagged my mom and dad in the post on Facebook, and I haven't heard anything back. My dad liked the post, so I know he saw it.
I know my parents listen, and we're supposed to go to lunch today, so I guess lunch is on you today, Mom and Dad.
Fist bump, bud. Very nice. National Daughters Day. I have an update to...
No. National Transfer Money to Your Daughter Day.
Transfer money to your daughter's day. One of the things you did earlier this week, What's Hot with Hannah, following Monday Night Football, dude ran onto the field. Dude and his girlfriend, got onto the field and got hammered, got smoked by a Rams defensive back, I think.
2 of them.
2 of them got pummeled. The guy, and they were wearing shirts that said righttorescue.com. Of course, now everybody, what's that? What's that? Guess who got onto righttorescue.com?
You.
Yeah.
Oh, sheesh.
It's an animal. They're against factory animals. Anyhow, the dude that got tackled got turf burn on his face. He got squished so hard.
Good.
He's filing a police report against the Rams players who tackled him.
You're kidding.
Give me a break.
What did he think security was going to do when they finally caught him? I mean, he was going to get tackled eventually.
And what I kind of thought was interesting, after the Rams player, he comes right off the sideline and tackles a dude. And it's almost like he's in the middle of a game. He doesn't gloat a whole lot, but he does kind of like, gotcha. You know? It's pretty awesome. And then there was another story, another update to one of the stories that you had this week on What's Hot with Hannah. And I don't remember what it was. Coming up, 7:35. I really don't.
What was it about?
2 of us.
McDonald's?
Oh! Yeah. One of our listeners sent us what would be in that McDonald's adult Happy Meal.
It's horrifying.
It's like a McDonald's, but it's a Ken doll unclothed. Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate here in Missouri, Jonathan Dine, is here. When was the last time you heard from a Libertarian candidate? What separates them from Republicans? What separates them from Democrats? How's the campaign going? You and I are going to find out 5 minutes from now.
What ends up happening, and the follow-up question always is about the exclusions for rape and incest. That seems to be a sticking point to people, that if a young girl or a young woman finds herself in that horrible situation, should she be entitled to get an abortion?
You know, it would be really wonderful if abortion was rare and legal. The way they said it.
That's a Republican, rare and legal. Carrie Lake, who's running for governor of Arizona, in an interview on a radio station in Phoenix, KTAR 92.3 FM's The Mike Broomhead Show. I don't know if that's the dude's real name, Broomhead. Like the name. He asked her, and she says, safe and legal. And right away, well, hold up. Now, not until the interview was over, but it shows you how touchy of an issue this is, especially for the conservatives. When I'll go back, I think the reality is most people are not that passionate about abortion itself. They're passionate about it as a campaign topic. And I'll present that as another piece of evidence to back up my take on that. She's having to clean that up, Herschel Walker and the abortion thing there. And if Herschel Walker would have just come out and said, yeah, I did that, I think there'd be a whole lot more respect, maybe. But not that he had a great chance to possibly win that Senate seat in Georgia anyway, but maybe he'd have a better chance if he came out and said, yeah, I did it. I want to ask, what's a libertarian take on this? We know the far left, far right, Dems, Republicans. We know what their take is on things. I want to bring in Jonathan Dine here on To Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell, producer Hannah, John Marsh, Brian Hausworth. I am Branden Rathert, and Jonathan Dine is a libertarian candidate for the United States Senate running against Eric Schmidt, Trudy Bush Valentine. Jonathan is welcome into the show. As a libertarian, what is your take on abortion?
Well, you know, I do believe abortion is kind of one of those wedge issues that's used to kind of polarize the left and the right. You know, I think people have good faith issues on both sides. You know, as a libertarian, I believe that the government should be kept out of the matter. You know, it should be between the person and their doctor. You know, I've said before that I'm pro-choice in all things. You know, people should have the freedom to do these things, you know, without reprisal of government incarceration or, you know, it's just, to me, it's a freedom issue. If you're not free to choose irresponsibly, are you really free at all?
So for folks that are newer to talk radio, we have an influx, Jonathan. We're incredibly proud of what we've been able to accomplish here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri and Columbia and Jefferson City and the Lake region and then north of Columbia. We're incredibly proud. We've got hundreds of thousands of regretful Biden voters that have been checking out Wake Up Mid-Missouri, like trying to figure things out. So we try to explain things in the simplistic terms, how these things affect you. And part of that, okay, what is a libertarian? By the way, Gary Nolan, card-carrying member of the Libertarian Party. Next time you see him, ask him to take his Libertarian card out of his wallet. Heard Jennifer Bukowski do it once. It was hilarious. He's here 9 to noon. Incredible show. Staunch Libertarian. So let's start here. What makes, as a whole, Jonathan, what makes you different from, let's say, Eric Schmidt? What makes you different from a Republican?
Well, if you were to paint with a broad brush, libertarians are socially tolerant, and we're fiscally conservative. We basically want the government to stay out of people's personal lives, and we also want the government to stay out of your wallet. We'd like it to be a good steward of your tax dollars, but on the flip side, we'd also want you people to be able to make decisions for themselves in their personal lives without being incarcerated, say for marijuana use or something like that. You know, it's really, I feel like we encompass some of the best values from both parties without a little bit of the extremism that you find on the left and the right.
At what point did you decide that you were a libertarian? And is there like a particular person that you look up to in the libertarian movement?
You know, I probably thought I was a libertarian early in high school, just kind of paying attention to politics. I didn't find somebody who encompassed all of my views. Probably the best person to highlight as a good libertarian would be Justin Amash. He was a Republican congressman in Michigan, and he was one of the few who was very outspoken on fiscal issues, Constitution, gun rights, but then also on social issues, giving people the freedom over their lives.
Now, in Missouri, have you seen like a rise in folks identifying as libertarians? I'm pretty involved in Republican stuff. We got meetings a lot. I noticed, I think there's a Libertarian candidate for auditor. So are you meeting regularly, and have you seen an increase in membership?
So there is definitely an increase in influx in the Libertarian membership. A few years back, we might have gotten, maybe 1 or 2 new members a month at the state level. And now it's not uncommon to get 4 to 5 new members a week. So there's definitely more people out there looking for an alternative to the two-party system. It's an uphill battle, even with, the debates where they're usually Libertarians are not included in the debates or included in the polling, which is usually used as the criteria to include in the debate.
I was chatting with a guy, and by the way, the two-party system, man, my ears perked up. I mean, I'm listening to you anyway, Jonathan, but you said that, and my ears really perked up. Tuesday, I was helping somebody move, chatting with a guy who's about 32. He was a legislative aide in Jefferson City and also was a legislative aide in Michigan, and one of his ideas, even on the ballot, say, okay, beside the two-party system, what if you walked into a polling place, you're walking in, you're going to vote, you're in Cole County, it's November the 8th, and what if we opened up the ballot and looked at it, and there's the name Jonathan Dine, Eric Schmidt, Trudy Bush Valentine, Paul Van Abel, and there's no letters, no R's or D's behind anybody's names, no L's, no C for Constitutional Party. What's your take? I kind of thought just an interesting concept. If I've done my homework, I know who I'm voting for. It doesn't matter the letter. I'm talking on the ballot. Ballot. I thought that's interesting concept. What's your take on that?
I think that's a pretty good concept. Like most Americans, I'm tired of the constant fighting between the Republicans and Democrats. I feel like beating the other team has now become more important than finding solutions to America's problems. One team could come up with a good idea, trying to balance the budget or something, and the other team will hate it just because the other team came up with it. So it creates a bunch of hostility.
All right. Our guest, Jonathan Dine, Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate. That's a seat currently held by Roy Blunt. He's joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
I actually support this amendment. There's a lot of people on the Libertarian Party in particular who are against it. They don't think it's good enough or goes far enough. But if we're moving the ball in the right direction, I'm okay with that. Me personally, I was sentenced to prison for marijuana possession. Wasn't even my marijuana. I had called the police because someone broke into my house. But when they got there, they found some pot in my roommate's room and decided to charge us with it and not the guy who broke into the house. So if this Amendment 3 could help other people not suffer the same fate of being locked into a prison cage, put into a jail system which is overcrowded, like you guys were talking about earlier this morning, half of the people in prison are there for nonviolent drug offenses. It's clogging police resources, courts, jails, which could be used for fighting violent crime and real criminals.
Years ago, I walked into a courtroom in Idaho, flew from Florida out to Idaho. My kid got into a little bit of legal trouble. He's good now, owns his own business. Remarkable kid, beautiful family. And I walked into this courtroom and was stunned. This courtroom, and it was kids, 18 to 22 years old. This courtroom packed with kids, every single one of them caught with a little bit of weed. Now, I didn't go, well, see, then we just need to legalize it. I wasn't making excuses for my kid, but I was shocked at this. And we could get into a whole different conversation regarding Amendment 3, the legalized weed here in Missouri. My opinion on that, by the way, has been evolving. I haven't changed my mind. I haven't backtracked. I'm evolving a little bit as I learn more about this. I don't care. You want to smoke weed, smoke weed. I'm like you in that point. It's not my business. You go right ahead. I don't partake in the stuff anymore. So I think there's enough weird stuff in this. The end game is legalized marijuana. But there's just enough other stuff in this bill that I'm like, man, I don't know. As a matter of fact, we're in the process of trying to find more. That's another conversation because there's some other things I want to get to. How long were you in prison for?
I was sentenced to 3 years in prison. I actually wanted to take it to trial, but I don't know if you're familiar with the trial system in America. You're supposed to have a constitutional right to a jury trial. Unfortunately, when you try to exercise that right, the prosecution will usually come at you and say, well, if you get found guilty in trial, we're going to give you 7 years. So I was deciding whether I should try to do the 7 years because I wanted to fight for my innocence. But then in Missouri, you have to do 15% of your time when you get put in prison for the first time. So by the time I would have actually even gone to trial and all that, I would have already passed the 15% threshold.
Man, Jonathan Dine, Libertarian candidate, U.S. Senate, seat currently held by Blunt. Did you, what was prison like? I know you get asked that a million times.
It's an interesting experience. When you're sent in there, it's kind of like you're in the Thunderdome. It's just a bunch of knuckleheads. I basically worked out all the time. I came out shining like new money. I was in great shape. I was focused and concentrated, and I immediately got started on my personal training business. But, I don't think as many other people are as lucky as me or, have the same kind of experience. But it's something that, I don't think people should be put in there for vices. Yeah. I don't believe vices are crimes.
Yeah.
So I believe that
when you were sitting in, what prison did you serve in?
So I went to Boonville.
Boonville, okay, yeah. Well, yeah. So you lived here for a little while.
Yes, sure did.
Yeah, I appreciate your sense of humor. I want to ask you this, though, because I also very much appreciate a comeback story. I appreciate a story of somebody that's gone through the stuff, but then they're able to turn their lives around. Much respect for that. When you were in prison for 3 years here in mid-Missouri, did you ever once sit there and while Thunderdome is going on around you, did you ever stop and think one time, I'm going to run for U.S. Senate one day?
Actually, my experiences with the criminal justice system is what rooted me to run for office. I said, well, if you want to change the laws, you got to change the lawmakers. So I spent countless hours in the legal library. I spent a lot of time just kind of formulating a plan and seeing, how it would go. So, this is my fourth time running. I've got no illusions that I'm going to win or anything, but I do like to get up and talk about issues that I feel like sometimes Republicans and Democrats just want to gloss over because they're worried about re-election. They don't want to take on any controversial issues at the moment.
Yeah. Jonathan, can you do us a favor? Gary Nolan, who hosts Gary Nolan Show weekdays 9 to noon, he's got to be loving this right now. I'm loving it so much. Are you at a spot where if we put you on hold for like 4 minutes, we come back? Because I want to ask your opinion kind of on a local story that has to do, and since you have been in prison, this is maybe something you can relate with, sentencing guidelines. Are you able to hang out with for a few minutes with us?
Sure.
All right, very cool. Jonathan Dine, Libertarian candidate for Senate, running against Trudy and Eric Schmidt. Also, Jonathan Dine's got a good sense of self. What does he think about his chances of winning, and why does he do it? We're going to get those answers from him coming up 5 minutes from now.
To hear the teachers say those types of things, I think they enjoy being here, and they appreciate that they've been able to get those additional funds to.
That is Charlie Birch, Superintendent, Eugene Schools. Governor Parson, he's going to be joining us tomorrow on a Feel Good Friday. Governor Mike Parson, hey, Feel Good Friday. We think a successful special session in Jefferson City. Folks are going to be seeing more money in their paychecks because of the tax cuts. Is it worth having a politician on the show on a Feel Good Friday? Because our Feel Good Fridays are a little different. We're trying to back off the heavy political stuff. But I think more money in your paycheck, I think that's reason to feel good.
Yeah, but Governor Parson has to be feeling good, right? He set out some goals. He said, hey, legislature, this is what I would like you to do. We've got some issues on ag tax credits, and we've got some issues on the tax cuts, and I'd like you to do that. And facing a legislature that really hasn't been very cooperative or getting along and getting it done, he's got to be feeling good.
And so big session. Biggest tax cuts in Missouri's at least recent history.
Yes.
So in his first radio station, of course, that he's talking to.
Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Here on 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 104.5 KWOS 950. Branden Rathert, Stephanie Bell, producer Hannah, Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, Jonathan Dine, Libertarian candidate for the United States Senate, running along with the Constitutional Party candidate, Paul Van Abel, also, of course, Trudy Bush Valentine, and then Eric Schmidt. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, you're talking about, so you spent time in prison, and your time in prison and the BS that surrounded your case, that was one of the impetuses for you saying, you know what, I'm going to run for the United States Senate. Although you weren't thinking that while you were eating oatmeal every morning for breakfast and ramen noodles at the prison in Boonville. We've got a case here earlier this week. A guy with a record of assaulting a county jail guard. He also has a record, been convicted of stabbing a homeless man, shooting him with a paint gun. Gets out of prison like 30 days ago, pushes a young 24-year-old woman over the bridge, kills her. And we don't know the stories behind, the 4 years in prison. Lot we don't know. But as a whole, because we see this as an incredibly hot topic nationwide, toughness, these weak DAs and prosecutors and, Garcetti, let's let them out of prison. It'll be beautiful. They've been rehabilitated. Give them another chance. As a libertarian and as somebody who has been in prison, what's your take?
I think it really illustrates the disparity between sentencing for drug crimes and sentencing for violent crimes. You've got that Jeff Mazinski guy who was sentenced, I think it was to life in prison here in Missouri for selling some pot brownies. It's, to me, violent crimes and real criminals should be punished. That's the proper role of government, is to protect you from criminal laws. Should be violation of others' rights. So when you look at something like that, they kicked that guy out probably to make more room for drug arrests. The real reasons the prisons and the jails and everything are bursting at the seams is because we're arresting too many drug users.
And I do need to mention this real quick. I should have mentioned this earlier. Several text. Eastbound I-70 apparently completely stopped at the Rocheport Bridge. Somebody says there's a FedEx driver talking to law enforcement. Eastbound I-70 completely stopped at Rocheport Bridge. I've got 30 seconds. I'm not being rude, but you don't have a chance. You have no money in your campaign. You have spent no money. You have nothing, and very likely no chance of winning. I wish that weren't the case, but it's a fact. Why do you, and it's not the first time you run, why do you keep doing this, Jonathan? 15 seconds.
Well, I like to push the envelope on the issues. When I first ran in 2010, we were talking about $10 trillion in debt. We're now $30 trillion in debt. Neither party is serious about balancing the budget, reducing your taxes.
Jonathan, gotta go.
Your freedom.
Jonathan Dine, Libertarian candidate for Senate, man. Thank you for joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
very seriously looking at how we can sue Google. Google controls 53% of the emails in the United States, and they are suppressing right now Republican get out the vote emails ahead of this election. We know this. For the past 10 months, the last 4 days of every month, all of our emails go undeliverable, 0% deliverability. This is outrageous. It is voter suppression by big tech.
You know what? I might be bored. On its surface, sounds a little conspiracy theorist to me. That is Ronna McDaniel, chair of the RNC, Republican National Committee, and she says to Google, they're not sending out our emails. And I'm actually, and if I'm being weird about this, you tell me, but I think I agree with what she says. She says, we're looking at suing Google because we try to send out fundraising emails, and what did she say? 53% of the emails in the nation go through Google. Our stuff isn't going out. I've had discussions with other people, like sometimes when you go to try to Google, I don't know, something that's not favorable to a progressive like Kamala or Joe, or something that's not quite mainstream news, but you know what's out there? And sometimes you have a hard time finding it, but you know it's there. I don't know that that's such a weird theory, what Ronna McDaniel is on to there. Randy Tobler hosts the Randy Tobler Show here on the radio station, weekdays 4 to 6. Am I being a little conspiracy theory? And if so, tell me, man. I can take it. I can take ownership of it.
Conspiracy is when the reality is out of proportion to the perception. No, we talked with Gates McGavick the other day, and he said that I looked at a graph. Now, unless it's photoshopped, it was a graph of the number of inbox receipts of their emails, their appeals, and it seems like about every month near the end of the month, it looked like an EKG. there was a dip, a real deep, it looked like a stalactite, and then it would go back up and then back down and back up. And I'm thinking, my gosh, they are manipulating us, man. This is a mind game played by the biggest social media companies and tech companies in the world. It's frightening.
And because I've talked to people about it before. For example, Brian Hansen, who is the star of the Gary Nolan show. I'm like, hey, Brian, I'm trying to find this. Or when you and I sit here and hang out, we're trying to find this. And it's like, this should be a simple Google search. Why are no results showing up for this? And it happens more than once. And you go, okay, why? I know it's there. Why will Google not let me find this? Maybe a little bit of a stretch, but it makes sense now because they're agreeing with what I am thinking. And so they must be right. Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Mr. John Marsh is here. There's producer Hannah.
Good morning.
Brian Hausworth running around handling news, getting the latest, some new details this morning regarding this 24-year-old woman pushed over a bridge to her death right on 63. And reading some of the court documents that Stephanie and I have our hands on this morning, these eyewitness accounts, like one dude, he's driving down 63. He's in a pickup truck and sees this couple on the side of the road fighting, doing something. He picks up the phone. He grabs his phone, and he calls 911 and says, hey, there's a couple on the side of the road, and this dude is trying to kill her. He is trying to pick her up and throw her over the bridge. And there's a lot of different things to this story, Randy. You've got somebody who has served time for some pretty horrible crimes in the first place. There's the homeless issue, sentencing issues. Why was this guy out of prison? He was out of prison for less than 30 days. Your initial gut reaction when you hear about this?
Yeah, it was. It gets worse as we hear more about it. I mean, it sounds like they had some kind of a relationship, or that he was trying to get her stuff. Someone said that before this all happened, a half an hour earlier, they were seen together, some kind of an argument. And this guy has got track record. And what gets me, Brandon, is while he was in the Boone County Jail, he rushed as an attendant was taking the tray out of the pod. He rushed her, grabbed her handcuffs, and handcuffs her and says, now you're mine, or something. I mean, you'd think that kind of an aggravation to a guy that, attacked a 73-year-old homeless guy with a paintball and then an axe or a knife. I mean, you got to be kidding me. The soft-on crime is emerging as the issue in this midterm. I'm hearing people talk about that more than almost inflation. Not quite yet, but we're getting there.
We were chatting with State Rep Cherie Tolson-Reich this morning because she has a unique perspective on this. She has worked to get nonviolent offenders out of prison, most notable Demetrius Woods. because what he does in this community, this guy is such a beautiful human being. He was the drug dealer, drug kingpin in Colombia in the 80s and 90s, went to prison. Cherie Tolson Reich helped to secure his release. This guy owns 3 small little businesses. He got a vendor contract at Mizzou basketball. That is just astounding. And again, just a lovely creature. He goes into schools and stuff like that. So Cherie, I think, had an interesting perspective on this, where she's helped to get people out of prison. But then you see things like, and again, we don't know the whole story on why he only served 4 years of a 7-year term and why it wasn't a stiffer sentence. We don't know any of that. But it occurs to me, Randy, these aren't just conservative talking points. Every real major issue that we have in this country right now, in this tree of problems, its roots are in the Democrat Party. Its roots of all the problems we have today seep dink into that Democrat soil. People out killing people and hurting people. Even it's soft on crime, progressive attitudes. It's soft on crime DAs. The problems we have at the border. By the way, right as we were coming back here on the show, we were notified by the mothership, Fox, that somebody has done a beautiful thing. Somebody has sent some more illegal immigrants to a sanctuary city. And I think that's beautiful, and they should be commended. Sent them to Washington, D.C., to right outside of Kamala Harris's vice president residential quarters. And all of these real things that we have, it's all rooted in Democrat ideas. And I know this, but it's just like everything we look at today, that's where it comes from, Democrats.
Well, you're right. Well, and look, beyond that, it's legislators, decision makers, whoever it is that's making these decisions. Maybe it's prosecutors in cahoots with the judges, whoever's getting people out early. Those people don't go live next to whoever that made the decision to let them out early. I'm talking about the violent offenders like this guy who threw the woman over the railing on the bridge. And it's sort of a not in my backyard mentality that these legislators have. I mean, whether it's climate change and you can't drive your fossil-fueled car, but they sure can jet around on airplanes to Davos and to everywhere around the world and back and forth to D.C., right? You can't have your gun. They're going to take your AR-15, but they have armed security. Are you listening, Cori Bush? I mean, this thing's where we're getting into this basically a caste system where there's the elites in the academy and in the legislatures, and there's all the rest of us. And it's just deal with it, people. We're going to be protected. We're going to do okay. Inflation doesn't hurt us. All the government pays for all of our expenses. But the rest of you peasants, just eat the bread and be happy.
Randy, thank you for joining us. I do want to get back to Brandon's questions about the lady who was thrown to her death off the bridge, about 38 to 40 feet. Kaylin Ann Schmidt is her name. You and I have talked, and Brandon's talked about this, about witnesses, and it's been documented. We have witnesses in Colombia who have been afraid to come forward because they fear retribution from gangs or whoever. And in some cases it's gangs. In other cases they fear retribution from the perpetrator. In this case, we had multiple witnesses who came forward, anywhere from 4, maybe 6, maybe more. They had other calls as well. But your take on the witnesses who stopped and made the calls to CPD and to help identify this suspect, which especially the homeless person who was in that camp. Randy, your thoughts?
Well, God bless them for having the courage to speak out, because we live in a time when our institutions, particularly, I mean, this is the perception. I'm sure that the people in the justice system, locally, regionally, state, and nationally, would say, yeah, Randy, you're just get rid of your tinfoil hat. The perception is that we protect the perpetrators, we protect them, not the victims, not the people who would report them. I mean, look, we've asked this question a lot, both around the kitchen table and on the air and everywhere. And you ask people, hey, if you saw a crime, would you stand up and wave your hand and say, hey, I witnessed it and I'll be happy to? Very few people will say that because, public data is public data. People know where people live. It's not that hard. Criminals are very adept at finding out what they need to do their nefarious deeds. And we just don't have a feeling that doors shut, case closed kind of cases are just going to be prosecuted, so that when you do have the courage to do that, you have the confidence that the person will be prosecuted, put in jail, and the key thrown away. I would be more than happy to have a tax raise to pay for as many jails as it takes to throw the key away on these kind of people. This guy that threw this woman over the bridge clearly is not going to be rehabbed, and he needs to be put away for good. That should have happened earlier.
All right. Randy Tobler, host of the Randy Tobler Show, weekday afternoons, 4 to 6 here on the radio station. He's joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Yeah, the combination started with the mandate for electronic medical records in 2010 as part of the Stimulus Act, 910, and then was on steroids in 2014 with Obamacare. Expenses, just mandatory fixed cost expenses that are not fully reimbursed by the government in the context, especially for rural hospitals that used to be supported with a little bit of a sweetener in their reimbursement rates. Those went away. Reimbursements have gone down. Commercial insurance reimbursements have paralleled the fall in Medicare. They're not making up the difference that Medicare that they used to do. So a combination of decreasing reimbursements, increasing regulatory and compliance demands has resulted in basically at least 50%, if not more, after pandemic, of smaller rural hospitals being on life support. And I don't see anything happening soon. Look, Medicare has proposed, starting in January of next year, the option for struggling small hospitals to become just emergency rooms with a couple of observation beds and a clinic. That doesn't serve people well in those communities. They're going to have to travel long distances, but it appears the way that's the way it's heading. You're going to basically have triage and transfer Band-Aid stations in the rural areas, and you better hope that you live until you get to a central area like St. Louis, Springfield, Kansas City, or Columbia.
I have to get your take on Illinois. You know, there are a few surgical procedures that I would feel comfortable getting done in an RV, but Illinois Planned Parenthood apparently is going to do abortions in an RV. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is abominable. Disasters happen with simple procedures. The simple procedures are the ones that we tend to be more complacent about. Those are the ones that I'm most worried about when I step into the operating room with a, quote, simple procedure, because those can go bad, and then you need to have emergency care. It's unlikely, depending on what gestational age that they're going to perform these surgical abortions on, the earlier, the less likely for a major catastrophic complication. The late-term abortions can be fraught with just horrific complications, bleeding, perforation of the uterus, things like that. So, look, I'm never in favor of mobile surgical units, but I guess people are so avid to, I think, make a point on the one hand, on the part of Planned Parenthood, and on the other hand, I guess, to get the care if they need it rather than traveling. To me, it seems like it's a gimmick. It's a bright, shiny object for the pro-abortion lobby. I don't think it's going to last long.
And it's just, regardless of people's opinions on abortion, it's in a food. I keep thinking seriously what they're doing in Illinois, like a food truck or like an ice cream truck, like coming by. Hey, ringing the bell. Get your abortions here. It's just so bizarre.
You're right. And it diminishes the solemnity of the operation. Look, very few women that I know and I've taken care of in my 30-some-odd years in care, no one feels good about getting an abortion. It's rare when women do that with and don't give it a second thought. It's a solemn occasion. It's a difficult decision for women. However you think about it, you got to respect the fact that it's a big deal in that person's mind and what's going on in their life that led to that. And I just think it's disrespectful to, as you say, have it, just like a food truck in the parking lot. It just doesn't make sense. It's just not a professional atmosphere. And I'm just sorry to see them doing it. But, what you can say? It's the People's Republic of Illinois.
Again, you look at those progressive policies. They think it's okay to go around in an ice cream truck and give abortions. Blows me away. Randy Tobler, I know it's early. What's coming up on your show starting at 4 today?
Talking with Chief Economist at Show Me, Aaron Hedlund, and then we're going to check in with Ashley Emmel and see what's on her mind. So it'll be a lot of fun.
All right. Randy Tobler, host of the Randy Tobler Show, weekdays 4 to 6 on 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 104.5 KWOS 950. Morning Bell coming up 5 minutes.
The 1-1 pitch. A swing, and there it goes! Left field, way back! That's home run number 700! Pujols hits a 3-run homer, and he hit 699 and 700 at Dodger Stadium on September 23rd, 2022. 8:23 p.m. Pacific time.
And home run number 700 gets us into the Morning Bell with Stephanie Bell business news with that little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
The St. Louis Cardinals have a huge impact on the St. Louis region and our state. According to Greater St. Louis, this season, the Cardinals were projected to attract 3 million fans and generate over $300 million in economic impact. They estimate that about 40% of the game's attendees are from out of town, so it's drawing a lot of folks to the area. And specifically with the wild card games coming up this weekend, I think each one is expected to generate, I think they said $6 million each, basically, in economic benefits to the region. And of course, if we make it past the wild card, more money and more money and more money. So good news.
So that's money that's pumped into Missouri coffers, and plus Stephanie Bell's talking sports, kind of, and didn't even
look at me go. And I think, it is important. This week we've talked a ton about violence and about crime, and we've been on it today. And this is we need to get control of the crime because we know these types of events, whether it's the Cardinals or the World Cup, we're making this estimate saying, hey, 40% of these people are going to come from out of town. If suddenly those people aren't coming from out of town, those numbers go way down. And this is money that we use to support our roads and everything else that we need.
I like that. Sports and business news. That's the twist. Okay, that's the twist we're always talking about. Coming up 5 minutes from now, progressive trolls that actually have a sense of humor. And I'm going to back Joe Biden on something. We're doing that 5 minutes from now.
They just have to be a conservative.
Definitely someone that wants to have kids.
I like an independent man. Personally, I like the alpha male vibe.
I want a man who really loves his family.
Definitely someone whose faith is important to them.
For me, it's someone who actually wants to meet my parents.
Why do you want to date a conservative?
For me, at least I know that we're going to start off with some shared values.
It's the Right Stuff dating app. I don't know if anybody, if you have checked this out. If you have, it'd be cool to hear from you if you're thinking about doing it. So it's a dating app, conservative seeking conservatives. Sometimes progressive trolls are funny. And by the way, it was started by the sister of, somebody who used to work in the Trump administration. I can't think of her name. Kellyanne Conway.
Oh, her sister?
Her sister started this app. It's Apple only, so you have to utilize Apple. Ryan McEnany, who's the sister of Kayleigh McEnany, used to work in the Trump administration. So, of course, as is the case with almost everything else, the trolls get out there in the basement and they pull out their Mountain Dew and an old box of pizza from last night in their mama's basement, and they start typing, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm throwing grenades and then hiding. But here, some of it's kind of funny what they're saying about this. I saw this app advertised on one of my trusted conservative news channels. My wife passed away 2 days ago, and I think I've mourned long enough. She would want me to be happy and get back out there on the dating scene. So when I saw this Right Stuff dating app, I knew I had to jump on it. And then they go on to say the app is actually funded by Bill Gates. What happens is they take your photo and information and store it in a database that will be used in the future as a way to identify and exterminate all of us conservative Christians. Another person put on, I got onto this app, and guess what happened? The FBI showed up at my house.
Oh, sheesh.
This app is invite only. I tried to join to see all the men in my area that I should avoid. Gosh. But unfortunately, I will just need to continue using the sex offender registry. Wow. Man, these poor progressives they wet the bed because we don't agree with them, and they show it in this stuff. We get that a lot on the show here, actually, from all walks of life, man. They cry, texting. They wet the bed, calling. It's sad. Seriously, and I'm not even trying to be funny here. I'm very serious about mental health issues, somebody who dealt with it for a lot of years. Some of these people that we hear from, whether here at the radio station, hiding in, their work office, and then texting and calling and all this, these people, they need some mental help.
How wrong we are and how much they hate the show, except they listen every day.
Yeah.
If you're that triggered, you can turn, you can listen to something else that makes you feel good.
John, do you... Yeah. True. I remember once, and this happens with a lot of popular radio shows, but years ago, and the ratings were coming out. You're doing a new show, and you're new in town, and you get the people. You got some people that like you, and here's your ratings, and your ratings start to go up, and then you do these perceptual studies. Why is it that people are listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri? Well, they like it, and they're listening because they want to hear what happens next. And then you talk to the other focus group, the people that don't like the show, and you ask these people, you don't like the show, but you keep listening. Why do you keep listening? The answer given, same answer as the people who like the show. I want to hear what they say next.
Interesting. I loved, my favorite, after Trump got elected, I listened to so much liberal media because they were all just like having a meltdown, and it was so entertaining. I just loved hearing them whine about it.
And there are numerous, and seriously, if you are one of those, and it's totally serious here, I'm not trying to be sarcastic or facetious, there are numerous resources for help. So if you spend your time being a troll on the internet, or if you spend time bugging radio stations because you disagree with everything they say, and you call their coworkers and you yell and you scream and you do all of this stuff, there's even a new number for you that Missouri just instituted this past summer.
It's 311, right?
I think that's right? I think that's the number to call before you dig, to check for power lines.
Is it?
I don't.
Sorry.
Is it 988?
988.
You know what's funny about those 3-digit numbers, by the way? They do the easy 3-digit number, 911, 988, 311, 411. They do
988. Sorry.
988. They do all those numbers. They do them 3 digits, so it's easier to remember.
I
can't remember.
I believe 311 is the non-emergency number here in Boone County.
That's right. We were just talking about that at the Ashland Alderperson meeting. That's why it was on. It was top
Alderperson.
It was top of mind for me. 311. Sorry.
So it's hard to remember because we have so many of these numbers. What's the number to call before you dig? Is that a 3-digit number? Everything's got a 3-digit number. All right, one more.
But if you have mental health issues, you should call 988.
Yeah, seriously. Because here's the thing. Like when I see this happen, it's like, my God, I feel so bad for you because I've had mental health issues like you have.
811 is the number to call before you dig.
All right, so call 988. But first, call 811 before you dig yourself in this hole and trying to attack us. How about that? But seriously, we do. I hate for anybody to be in so much pain that they put these vile comments on the internet, that they call and say nasty, untrue things. I empathize.
But it's pretty funny on that dating website.
On the dating website, final one, we'll move forward because Joe said something yesterday that even CNN's freaking out about, and I'm like, it doesn't bother me. So here's the final funny progressive troll on this conservative-only dating website called The Right Stuff. The app is invite-only. I tried to join to see all the men in my area that I should avoid. Points!
Okay.
I give her points. But I will just need to continue using the sex offender registry. To any right-wing men reading this now, you should just stick to your hand. Women don't care for not having rights and respect these days. I failed to follow Hannah's rule number 99. Always read the stuff before you go.
Rule number 1.
Rule number 1, read before you go on air. Well, and then there was another comment about, why would you want to date a racist and stuff like that? Because people that are conservative that share American values, and an American value is not being a racist. I'll tell you what is racist.
Immigrants up north, we need them to pick the crops.
That's racist, okay? That is action. Using words, that is not racist. But these people that need to call 988 because you're a conservative, you're racist. Not at all. Welcome into the show. Stephanie Bell is here.
Good morning.
And Mr. John Marsh. Producer Hannah, Brian Hausworth is here. Hannah, how are you today?
I'm here.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm a little bummed. So, as a child, we hope the magic of the tooth fairy and all these things, there's some magic to it. Or for people, and maybe you're a better example, the magic of radio. And then you end up working and having a very high-profile position on a show that's broadcast on more than one station into the state's capital, where all the things that happen in Missouri, they happen in our capital city, and a lot of them happen right here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 104.5 KWOS 950. But there's some magic to radio, for example, and I don't want you to go blow the magic.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's some magic to people listening.
None of it that I have anything to do with, but yeah, the people behind the scenes, it's pretty magical.
And the tooth fairy, it's magical. I yank a tooth out of my mouth and I put it under the pillow, and some broad in the middle of the night with little angel wings, she flies in. She never woke me up. Grabs my tooth, and she put a 50-cent piece in there when times were really tough, like when Carter was president. She only left a nickel.
And the real magic is now she has to leave like $5, I think. Inflation.
And Marsh, or a gift. Here's a gift card. The Missouri Department of Conservation, and I didn't know this. So, you go by some of the bluffs and stuff, for example, like by the Rocheport Bridge, and you see those retention ponds or whatever. I figure it's just lowlands, and it rains, water floods, and there's some holes. Some of that water stays in some of those holes off to the side of the river for a while. People go out there and they duck hunt and stuff. Magic ruined. According to our news partners, ABC 17, Missouri Department of Conservation is reducing the amount of hunting spots at the Eagle Bluffs Conservation Area for duck season because of a broken river pump. I didn't know they were pumping that water into those little holes, into those ponds.
You thought it was naturally occurring.
Well, I know, but it's ruined it for me. I'm like, oh, nature, and it's natural setting. It's so beautiful. I'm a big fan of nature. I really am. And they're...
Weren't you the one just complaining about people complaining about lakes drying up? And you're like, y'all, these are man-made. Why are you complaining? And now you're complaining about wetlands?
I'm not complaining they're drying up. I'm complaining that the magic is gone now. It's like when you find out the tooth fairy,
it's still magical.
Yeah.
And then there's people like Stephanie who tried to prosecute Santa Claus.
Right.
I just took away.
You're sad?
Yeah, and it's weird because I don't duck hunt. I don't do any kind of hunting. I don't care, but I just always nature.
You just hunt for women.
But that's... Quit laughing, John. All right. And by the way, it's not true. I don't hunt for women. It's the other way around. Coming up 5 minutes. That's not true either. 5 minutes from now, John, you...
Maybe.
Here's a big old serving of leftovers. Enjoy.
All right, leftovers. Some of the things we didn't get to here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 104.5 KWOS 950. Stephanie, what's in your fridge this morning?
You know, I was reading an article in the lawyer's paper about this this new lawsuit in the 8th Circuit, and it's real interesting. It's a First Amendment case, and there's this courthouse news service, and they said, hey, we publish like a daily roundup of like what petitions got filed in federal court. And that makes sense. You know, we talk a lot here about transparency and the right for people to know. And they said, hey, once you move to e-filing, we used to be able to just come to the courthouse, review the things, write our summary, and be done. Now that it's e-filing, we don't get access to these filings for a week or more. And that is violating, you know, we have a right to know these things. And so the lower court apparently said that the government employees had some type of immunity, and the 8th Circuit recently reversed that. So this case is going back to the lower court for a determination. I think it just presents a really interesting question as we move to electronic filing, we do more things online, and how you get access and transparency. Presumably when you have computers involved and things are faster, you think you would have more transparency. But I do think...
Okay, that's why I'm confused here. Okay, yeah.
Right, and I guess the processing of it is making it more difficult for this news service to just put out the publication. And I think we do have, you know, when somebody files a lawsuit, I think you should be able to access it, you know, as quickly as possible.
Biden did something yesterday, and I'm not that... CNN was kind of bothered by it. I wasn't that bothered by it. I do want to get to that. I want to mention real quick, Mark off the text 874-9339 talking about Department of Conservation says there's going to be fewer duck hunting spots because some of those retention ponds or whatever, they artificially pump the water in, and it just broke them. I didn't know that. I thought they were just like natural leftover water holes, and they're not. And it's like, I will never drive by those, because I drive by, I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. It's nature. Look what nature's doing. The water hangs out for a little bit longer, and it gives ducks. That's nature at work. And it's not. The water was being pumped in. Mark via text says, I burst the bubble for, and see, I'm even afraid to say this one for people that go to this place in Branson. It's from listener Mark. I'm afraid to even say this out loud on the air.
Don't ruin it for people.
Well, I won't say where it is. He says, I burst the bubble for my wife on a nature trail here in Missouri by telling her the waterfalls were man-made with pumped water.
Oh.
Now, that's funny. I bet, Mark, I bet you have an amazing marriage and a wife with a phenomenal sense of humor. Good on you. Marsh, what's in your fridge? Mm-hmm. He has. As a matter of fact, I think they have the same campaign consultant, whoever ran Josh's campaign, now running Herschel's campaign. So Holly's saying, yeah, I still stand behind this guy, which I'll offer as exhibit number 27. I believe most Republicans, they are not as passionate about abortion as they would lead you to believe. It's just something to campaign on. It's easy to, how dare you kill little babies and all this. I really believe they are not as passionate about the actual issue, personal to them. It's great to campaign on, but they're not as passionate as a lot of them. I'm not saying Holly specifically, but they're not as passionate about that as a lot of them. And we can pick several Republicans, several people with R's behind their name that have evolved since June. They've kind of evolved on this issue.
Scrubbed their website?
Scrubbed their website. Who? And
I can't remember who did it, but yeah, they had a bunch of stuff on their website about abortion. And not that they changed their policy, they just took it off. It evaporated. But that's what the Wayback Machine, you know, I bet, do you know what the Wayback Machine is?
Yes,
I use it all the time. If it was on the internet, I can find it.
Wayback Machine, it keeps
Yeah, it keeps screen captures basically of old versions of the website. And so, yeah, I mean, you can find, I use it on state websites. I use it on business websites. It's fascinating.
So here's the thing. Biden said a thing yesterday. He's hanging out with his new bromance mate, Ron DeSantis. They got along famously yesterday. Rivals anything John and I ever do. Sitting there at the deck, the landing zone, having lunch, watching the airplanes. Biden and Ron DeSantis, not quite on that level, but had a chummy get together. Anyhow, Biden's in Florida. He's talking to somebody. He utters the F word. It's bleeped out here, but CNN, so it's a little bit of Biden. You can't hear completely, but he's saying, you don't F with a Biden. Okay, so what?
Are you sure it's bleeped?
How
second that question.
much time do I have? Like 15? All right. Let's just assume it is and keep our fingers crossed. But afterwards, CNN here talks about how they've reached out to the White House for comment.
Coming down, we appreciate it. I picked the thing. I was. No one. Yeah, damn right. And I can't argue with your brothers.
So he just says the F word talking to a guy.
All right, good to see you.
We've asked Bakari, the White House, for comment on this. No response yet.
Really? Huh. CNN, you reached out to the White House? Yeah, we'd like to get a comment. The president today, he said the F word when talking privately with the mayor of a city in Florida.